You're listening to Seize Your Adventure, the podcast that shares stories of adventure and outdoor living with epilepsy. Hello adventurers, it's Fran here, and thank you all for joining me again today. For regular listeners, you might be wondering why the opening music has changed tone a bit for this episode. Well, it's because this is a special episode being released on the 26th of March, a day that is affectionately known amongst the epilepsy community as Purple Day. So every year on the 26th of March, people around the world wear as much purple as possible to spread awareness and show support for every person out there living with epilepsy. I have a bit of an audio adventure in this episode for you. Today's guest is an adventurer, a soldier and an author. He's been described by Sir Ranulph Fiennes as a determined, fearless adventurer and an inspiring man. He is the kind of person you imagine when you say the word adventurer. But before we get into the interview, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to everyone out there who listens to the podcast, everyone who's been supporting it by rating and reviewing it, and everyone out there who shares it on social media. Seize Your Adventure is a very niche concept about two things that I'm very passionate about, and it's only by all of you out there telling everyone about it that we can spread these stories. If you do enjoy Seize Your Adventure, and if you like today's episode, please can I ask that you leave a review and share it wherever you share these things, because it is the biggest thing that you can do to support me. So, today's guest is Jordan Wylie. And he is known for his challenges at the extreme end of the adventure spectrum. Jordan has run races in Iraq, Afghanistan and Somalia. He has written a book about his time tackling pirates off the coast of Africa, and he has hiked up Kilimajaro barefoot. But he is also known for the work he does helping others as an ambassador and campaigner for various charities, one of which is Epilepsy Action. Jordan was diagnosed with epilepsy after he contracted dengue fever whilst working in Djibouti, but rather than letting epilepsy scare him, Jordan took on the role of an epilepsy ambassador and continues to push the boundaries of extreme adventure, showing the world what someone with epilepsy can do. I managed to hunt Jordan down at the National Running Show in Birmingham back in January this year. He was there to speak about running dangerously, the challenge he set himself last year to complete 3 running races in the 3 most dangerous countries in the world. He also spoke about some of the mental and physical health challenges he has faced over the years. Unfortunately, Jordan was the first speaker of the day, and I couldn't get up from London in time for his talk. But we did manage to find a table to sit at afterwards so I could throw a few quickfire questions at him. You'll hear in a minute it wasn't the quietest place for an interview, so I do apologise for that. But Jordan was an absolute charm to talk to. You are going to enjoy this one, so here it is. Adventurer, soldier, author. This is Mr. Jordan Wylie. We're just going to do the quickfire 20 questions for you. So first off, where do you call home at the moment?
So home for me originally is Blackpool in Lancashire, as you might have guessed from the accent. But today I'm living down in a place called Andover in Hampshire. I ended up staying there after a military career. So I'm a bit of an honorary southerner, we could say.
Yes, yeah, indeed. Not quite lost the accent though.
No, I'm quite proud of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And what is your most treasured possession?
It's an easy one for me, that it's my daughter. You know, it might be a bit different to use a human being as your most treasured possession, but for me, my daughter is, the number one thing, person, whatever life, she brings meaning to every part of my life. So absolutely, my daughter Evie is by far the biggest treasured possession, and for me, my greatest achievement in life by a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. And how old is she at the moment?
She's 9. She'll be 10 this year, so she's probably not so little actually anymore.
Yeah,
she's becoming a little teenager soon. So but she's still my little girl.
Absolutely. And the happiest day of your life then?
Well, that probably links on, as you're going to guess, to the last question. But yeah, definitely when my daughter was born, I don't think anyone can ever prepare for being a parent. It's it is a shock to the system. It's really, really tough to explain. But all the ups and downs you have as a parent, and I have so much respect as well, I should say, for people who families have broke up and you have single parents, whether they be male or female, because to be a parent is, for me, the toughest job in the world, but it is also one of the most fulfilling. There is no better job at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you've been on quite a few different expeditions. What is the hardest one that you've done to date?
I've been on lots of expeditions, but I'm always trying to push the barriers of both physical, mental, emotional endurance. So I like to think the last one is the hardest I've done, because that's why I would have done it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I'm always trying to do something that's further, faster, tougher. So the running dangerously, for various reasons. One, because we are running through war zones, which brings its own sort of risk and danger, but also for me to run in my first ever marathon and half marathon in a war zone again was pretty tough, pretty brutal in many respects. So definitely the Afghanistan marathon was the toughest expedition for me so far.
Yeah, absolutely, and I completely get on board with that. People always ask me what's the best adventure, and I always say it's the last one or the next one.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yeah. You have been described by Sir Ranulph Fiennes as being fearless, but is there anything that you do fear?
I guess like a lot of people, I fear failure. I never want to fail. Anything I do, I always give 110%. I never go into anything half-hearted. I think that's probably the only thing. But it also that fear of failure is often what drives me, to levels beyond what people perceive are possible. But most things I'm pretty good with. No sort of phobias of spiders or anything like that. But yeah, failure. I have some weird sort of bucket list things like swimming with crocodiles, sharks and things. So I'm normally quite good with most things.
Yeah, swimming with crocodiles. I think that'll be off most people's list.
Yeah, that's like certainly in my top 5 things that I need to do in my life, and I hopefully do it in the next year or two. I find them such fascinating creatures.
Yeah. I just want to interrupt the interview very quickly to let you know Jordan is not the type of person to mention something if he doesn't plan to do it. On the 18th of March, he posted a photo on Twitter of himself underwater, just casually stretched out on his back, directly underneath a crocodile. The comment next to the photo said, "Sometimes you just have to chill out and take a break."
And it's not like anything, people talk about sharks, you go and swim with sharks and they talk about shark attacks and how many people are killed by sharks, but humans kill 100 times more sharks than sharks ever kill humans. So it's just about perspective, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there someone that you especially look up to?
I look up to lots of people. I think I try to surround myself with people that inspire me on a daily basis. They make me want to better myself. I want to learn from them. But I would probably say my dad. He was a former Royal Marine Commando, and he's somebody who always taught me that you only get out of life what you put in. I remember him from an early age saying that in life you meet talkers, you meet doers, and you need to decide quite early which one you're going to be. And I like to think that I'm always somebody who's good for my word. If I say I'm going to do something, I put it top of my agenda to follow it through.
Yeah.
So probably my dad, to be honest.
And can you just talk us through a regular day as an extreme adventurer? What did you get up to yesterday?
So one of the things with adventures is the adventure is obviously is the really fun part, but not always necessarily the hard part, because when you're trying to do weird, wacky, crazy expeditions around the world, you obviously need funding. Somebody's got to pay for that. So I spend quite a lot of time, I invest a lot of time in building relationships with companies, with brands, with businesses whose values are aligned to mine, who perhaps can benefit from some exposure, whether that's through the TV, the media, newspapers. So quite often I'm working on relationships through networking, through attending events, through speaking at events like today at the UK National Running Show, because they're the things that allow me to reach out to other people and to let people into my network. So yeah, yesterday was very much about sponsorship meetings, which is it's quite a normal day actually.
Yeah, fab.
I think it's lovely to just get that side of things as well, because people always see the adventures and the, like you say, the fun stuff and the exciting stuff.
There's a lot of the harder work is getting to the start line of any expedition, because to find the funding, to find the people who are going to get behind you, it's not easy. And you're only, I always say, you're only as good as your last expedition. So if you've told somebody you're going to do something or you're going to raise a certain amount of money, it's quite important to deliver that, because otherwise when you go around next time to attract fundraising, it's pretty tough.
So the slightly nosy one, who was the last person that you spoke to on the phone?
Oh, the last person, let's have a look while we're here. Who's the last person I spoke to on the phone? The last person I spoke to on the phone was actually the gentleman on the next table. So these guys, actually, it's important actually, because these guys from an organisation called Give Penny, and they are, best way would be to describe them, is a very extremely interactive charity fundraising platform. So think of Just Giving, but think of a platform that can do a million more things to make the experience of both fundraising, sponsoring, so much more interactive and engaging. And I think it's really important actually for fundraisers out there, because everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people in this day and age, they do a charity fun run, they do a marathon run, they do a climb a mountain, they might jump out of a plane. So how do you spark the imagination of people when everyone's done so many things already? And when you're looking for donors and sponsorships, that's really hard. So for me, using technology to be able to interact with people who are getting behind you, to be able to live feed from Afghanistan, to be able to do a FaceTime from the North Pole, these are all really important things to be able to engage people on that journey with you. So that was the last person I spoke to, was this organisation called Give Penny.
And like you say, it just comes back to that idea of community and the networking. It's so important.
Yeah, so important.
So obviously you are known as a very positive person. Would you say that there is anything positive that has come from your epilepsy diagnosis?
Yeah, definitely. One of the big positives is I get to meet really cool people like yourselves, an organisation like Seizure Adventure, because I was probably quite naive, perhaps even ignorant to epilepsy before it happened to me, and I guess that happens with a lot of people, whatever it might be in life. Until it affects you, you don't really know too much about it or have to deal with it. And I was just astonished to see how many people out there do have epilepsy. I couldn't believe some of the statistics when I'm very honoured to be an ambassador for Epilepsy Action, and the statistics that they send me on how many people are diagnosed on a daily, weekly basis. But one of the most important things for me about having epilepsy was sending a message out that you can still achieve anything that you want in life. Because I remember quite quickly people telling me, you can't do this, you can't do that, just because you've got epilepsy. And I was like, really? I can't do any of these things? And they said, you can't go running in Iraq or Afghanistan. And this is professional, medical professionals telling me this. And I'm saying, no, I'm still going there, but I will put measures in place to mitigate the risk. Things like wearing my road ID medical band, that if something happens and I have a seizure, people know that I have got epilepsy and they know what to do. Putting in place emergency medicine in case I do have a seizure and I need somebody to interact and help me, training people around me, making them more aware of what it entails to be a first aider to someone with epilepsy. So loads of positives, and as I say, just getting to meet more people and help them get over the stigma that they think, because if someone tells you something often enough that you can't do something, people start to believe you. So it's important to have people out there who are saying, it's a load of rubbish, you can do whatever you want, but let's take precautions and take risks.
And I have to say, how many people would tell you not to run across Iraq even if you didn't have epilepsy?
That's very true.
So might as well do it anyway. And just for people, can you give us an idea of the type of seizures that you have?
Yeah, so I've only ever had 2 seizures in my life, and I had my first one about 18 months ago. And at first, to be quite honest, the first time I had it, I was I was overseas, and I was in a country where nobody spoke English, so it was quite complicated because people didn't know what was wrong with me, and they couldn't ask me what was wrong with me when I sort of came back round. And when I got told that I may have epilepsy initially, I refused to believe it. I was like, I'm 35 years old, I've got no history of it in my family, I've not got epilepsy. And then 4 weeks later, I had another seizure, and I was like, okay, I might have epilepsy now. And since then, touch wood, I've never had another seizure. But I remember the first time though, I really chewed all the inside of my mouth, and it was so sore for months. It was like really tender. My mouth was bleeding. And I'd also because I fell over and sort of fainted, I had a seizure. I'd had a big sort of bruise across my head. I cut my face. So they're the only two I've had. And again, I don't know. I'm learning all the time about epilepsy, and when I speak to more people, I learn about their seizures. And when I go to Epilepsy Action, I'm surprised how many people out there are having seizures 5, 6, 7 times a day. It's incredible, really, and I feel quite fortunate that it doesn't affect my life too heavily, or maybe I don't let it affect my life, because I still think a lot of it is psychological. If you're accepting that your life is, it's influenced completely by epilepsy now, and you can't do anything, I think that's a very negative mindset to fall into. You need to encompass it in every aspect of your life, but you don't need it to control your life. That's the worst thing you can do, I think.
I think what you hit on there quite nicely is the idea of that balance between accepting that you have it, but also not accepting some of the limitations that you would assume would be there.
And then the biggest thing for me was probably having to surrender my driving license for a year, and then get reassessed by the sort of medical professionals, and it was actually probably one of the things that made me become a lot more healthier and fitter, because it's amazing, because you even just to go to the shops in 10 minutes, you take a drive these days, instead of just walking 10-20 minutes down the road, which again, getting out there and for anyone with epilepsy, or for anyone, just not even for people with challenges, just people in day-to-day life, go for a 30-minute walk every day, go for a run or a jog, because that puts you in a nice headspace. It keeps the brain ticking, it keeps you fresh, it allows you to organise your thoughts. So I recommend anyone, especially while we're at the national running show, go for a little jog now again.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've kind of covered this already, but what would be the best tip you could give for someone who is travelling or adventuring with epilepsy?
I think, firstly, you need to understand and respect your condition. I'm absolutely saying don't let it control your life, but you certainly have to be realistic in terms of, if you know what the potential triggers are of a seizure. For example, for me, it could have been dehydration, it could have been exhaustion, it could have been the heat, because there's a lot of stress on my body. So for me, personally, it was about, we have an expression in the military that says prior preparation and planning prevents poor performance, and that's no different with epilepsy. If you're going to go somewhere, if you're going to go on expedition, if you're going to go travelling, make sure you've got your medication, make sure you've got spare medication, make sure the people travelling with you know what your condition is, make sure they know what to do if you have a seizure, because there's nothing worse than you're in a strange place and everyone's touching you, feeling you, moving you around, and you don't even know what's going on. So it's just about prior preparation and planning anywhere you're going. If you're going to be on your own, there's obviously bigger risks. If you're going to travel to remote locations, do a risk assessment. I always say, whatever it is in life, everything starts with a risk assessment. And epilepsy is just another risk to manage. Whether you're going in a conflict zone, whether you're going to drive in your car, we're managing risk every day. We're constantly doing dynamic risk assessments when we cross a road, when we go into a building. Epilepsy is just another risk to manage that we need to be aware of.
Yeah. Really nicely put. So, if you were to have 4 people at a dinner party, which 4 people would you have?
Good question. For me, I want people who I can't see anymore. So I think it'd be probably people who passed away. I think family is is the most important thing in life. So for me to bring back, both sets of grandparents, I would say, there's lots of celebrities in the world, there's lots of influencers, but for me, family's everything. So, if I could bring back my gran and granddad on both sides, my mum and dad's side, and have one last supper with them, they'd be top seat at any table any day. Yeah. Makes me quite emotional, that now.
Yeah. And if there was one place off of the beaten track that you would recommend people do visit, what would it be?
Well, actually, you know what? I've been very fortunate to travel a lot of weird and wonderful places around the world. But probably closer to home, over the last few months, just on New Year's Day this year, I went up to Scotland, and what an incredible country. And again, probably been quite naive and oblivious to it's on our doorstep, and we always think we've got to travel to the other side of the world to find these sort of glorious places and incredible landscapes, but actually just 3 or 4 miles up the road, in a few hours drive, you can find scenery and landscapes that you will only ever see in Hollywood films. Normally it's absolutely incredible in the Scottish Highlands, and yeah, I think I went up to northwest Scotland. You can go basking shark diving up there. You can climb some of the most incredible mountains in Britain. So, I don't think you have to go a long way to find beauty. I think there's a lot on our doorstep in the UK, and that's certainly one of my objectives or New Year's resolutions, is to start adventuring closer to home, because we often overlook that, I think.
Is that the first time you went to Scotland then?
It was into the Highlands as such. I've been lots of times to Glasgow, Edinburgh, but actually going out into the remote wilderness, so to speak, because it was almost like I was the only person left on Earth. There was nobody around for hundreds of miles, and there's something quite therapeutic and special about that.
Yeah, it gets into your blood.
Yeah,
it really
it's
does.
Incredible.
So
and I'm going back to Ben Nevis next weekend actually.
Yes.
To do a climb, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah. So by the time this is out, that will already have happened. So
Yeah.
Make sure I update everyone on how that went.
Yeah, brilliant.
I can indeed give you an update on the Ben Nevis challenge. On the 27th of January, Jordan and a team of 7 other people did make it to the top of Ben Nevis. The weather was very icy and cold from the look of it, and the wind was very strong from the sound of it, but the team raised over £2,000 for charity in total.
And if you had the opportunity to speak to 18-year-old you, what would you say to him?
When I was 18, I won't use the language on here, but I was a naughty little boy still. I was quite immature. I thought the world owed me a favour. So I think if I could go back to that 18-year-old, I would say to him that the journey ahead is going to be tough. It's going to be a roller coaster. But apply yourself, work hard, and the world's your oyster, really. Because I think one thing we don't realise, especially when we're young, is we're surrounded by opportunities all the time, and we fail to realise that when we're young. And we only start as we sort of grow through life and we develop and we evolve, we then start to recognise those opportunities. But I've come to learn that life is a bit like a freight train that's passing us by all the time. And if you imagine the train full of empty carriages just passing us by, and we're stood on the platform watching, I see that life is like we're looking at that train, and that train is full of opportunities. And the train and the opportunities never stop to tell you it's an opportunity and you've got to get on. You have to throw yourself at those opportunities. You have to throw yourself on that train and see where the journey takes you. And I think for me it'd be to say to anyone who's listening, who's young or old or whatever it might be, that there are always opportunities, but you've got to have your radar up for them. You've got to be looking for them. They won't come to you and knock on your door. And also build relationships. I have a little when I talk in schools actually. I have a little what I call Jordan's ABC rule, and I say attitude is everything. If you can learn from a young age that attitude is one of the most important characteristics or attributes, attitude will take you a lot further than talent, than qualifications, than education. Just applying yourself with the right attitude, the willingness to apply yourself to learn, and will take you a long way in life. I say B for build relationships. Everywhere you go, you never know who you're going to meet. Build relationships. And don't build them to gain, build them to give. If you approach life with a giving attitude, that you want to help people and you want to give back, life and the rest will take care of itself. It's very reciprocal. And thirdly, C is for continuous professional development, which links into attitude. You can never stop learning. Every day is a chance to learn. It's a chance to meet people. Surround yourself with positive people. Don't be drawn down by negatives. They will suck the life out of you. Just find positive people and look after them and cherish them, because they're like diamonds. That they're special and they give you so much positive vibes and energy when you keep them in your inner circle.
Yeah, absolutely. So this kind of feeds in again to the same thing, but what is the best thing about being older and wiser now?
I think, good question. I think there's an irony, because when you're young and you're at school, people they used to say to you, and I'm sure you remember it, and I'm sure the listeners will remember it, but people say the school days are the best of your life and you should work hard, and it's that sort of old cliche. But actually it is really true, and there is something quite ironic that I left school with no qualifications, and now today and this day over the last 5 years I spend lots of money on trying to educate myself because I didn't listen in school. So school and academia is an opportunity in itself, and if you don't work hard and if you don't study, then your life, will pan out in that manner, and you will have to, if you want to succeed and you want to progress, you will have to go back and start learning again. So I think, again, linking back to attitude, really, apply yourself early, understand early, and also find out what your why is. Why do you do what you do? What are your values? What do you stand for as a person? You can work that out at a young age. Things like the military did a great job for me of teaching me the values of respect, courage, integrity, loyalty, discipline. And if you can apply those core values into your life from an early age, I think will stay with you forever, and the journey's as far as your imagination can go.
And now we do like to give a little bit of inspiration to people on the podcast and on the website. So can you give us one film, one book, and one podcast that you would recommend people listen to inspire them?
Good questions. The podcast, I'll go with the podcast first. There's a great podcast out there called Declassified. It's quite military orientated, but you hear from lots of inspirational veterans on there who have been in highs, have had lows in their life, and they've used what they've learned to succeed. So Declassified by Michael Coates, incredible podcast. I listen to it a lot. This has got to be an opportunity for me to plug my own book, Citadel.
Yes.
I'd be silly if I didn't plug my own book. So check out Citadel by myself, Jordan Wylie, available on Amazon in all good bookshops. It's about my journey though, so people will be able to relate to it, I'm sure. It's about my journey growing up in Blackpool to where I am today. And a film. My favourite film is probably The Shawshank Redemption, which is an incredible film. But a film that I watched the other day actually, A Beautiful Mind, a really, really good film, really powerful and moving. And I was also worked on a film many years ago called Captain Phillips. So for those who like a bit of action and pirates, I was very fortunate to work with Tom Hanks on that film. So maybe that one. But I think we'll go A Beautiful Mind, Citadel, and Declassified.
Yeah, fab. And you just mentioned there you do work with quite a lot of films and things like that as well. Is there anyone that you've met that has made you starstruck?
The only person that I've been starstruck by, and I've been starstruck by her 3 times, is Her Majesty the Queen. I feel really honoured to have met the Queen, and I was like shaking, so nervous, and what a real privilege, and what a lovely lady she is. It was like meeting one of your grandparents who dresses a lot better.
I can only imagine that one at the moment, but that's a whole different level, isn't it?
I was so nervous, and still am every time I've ever had the chance to interact. But that's the time when I've really been, that was like my England player, my Premier League player, my Hollywood A-lister and pop star rolled into one, Her Majesty the Queen.
Absolutely. And what does the future hold for you?
Well, this year is again, I only plan sort of 1 year ahead. I think we can look at 5 and 10 years, but you just never know what's around the corner or what's going to happen in life. And I've learned to have a plan, but be flexible. And the next 12 months I got some really good expeditions. I'm doing Rowing Dangerously, which is a world first attempt to row across the Gulf of Aden. I'm doing an abseil of the Angel Falls, the world's highest waterfall in Venezuela. Climbing Ben Nevis next week, and Hunted Series 4 is on at the moment. Yes. Thursday 9 o'clock. Don't miss it.
So there you go, TV show recommendation as well for you. And lastly, for a nice roundup, what would be your personal motto that you'd leave people with?
My personal motto is be the difference that makes a difference, because I think if we want to, we can all make a difference in this world. It doesn't mean we have to change the world, but we can change the world to a few people by helping them. So have a look around you, take note and see who you can help, because we can always help somebody, and if we all make a little bit of a difference together, we'll make a big difference.
Profound one to end on. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, and a real pleasure to be on the show. Thank you.
Jordan has so many credentials to his name. I was a little bit nervous going into that interview, but as you can hear, he is such an open and encouraging person. I didn't stay nervous for very long. If you'd like to know more about Jordan's next challenge, you can head to Give Penny, which Jordan mentioned in the interview. The link to the donations page is in the show notes for you. And do stick around until the end of the episode, where you'll get a bit more of a taste of what his challenge entails. If this was your first time listening to Seize Your Adventure, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you did enjoy today. Feel free to get in touch with me and tell me what you think about the episode, and please do go back and have a listen to some of the other stories. It's a slightly different setup from the one that we've had today, so I think you'll enjoy those ones as well. Next month we'll be back to the usual format. So on the 8th of April, Jake Quigley will be telling us the story of his brain surgery and the road of recovery that took him to the roof of the world. I'll then be chatting to Jake about his experiences on the 22nd of April. Before we go today, if you've listened before, you will know that I like to give the last word to my guests. So I thought I would end today's episode with the advert for Jordan's next challenge for charity. As he said in the interview, he likes to push himself a little bit further with each challenge, and, well, he's really pushing the boat out with this one.
In 2018, I ran through 3 of the most dangerous countries in the world to help children affected by war and conflict access education. In 2019, we're going to be pushing the boundaries even further. I'm going to attempt to row solo and unsupported across the world's most dangerous strait of water. This has never been done before. This is rowing dangerously. I'm going to be rowing across the Bab el-Mandab Straits, one of the most dangerous and certainly one of the most geopolitically contested areas of water on the planet. Although the stretch of water is only 18 nautical miles wide, there will be danger at every stroke of my oars, which is why no person on record has ever completed this highly dangerous task. I'm honoured to introduce my flagship sponsor for Rowing Dangerously 2019, Greypage, who are one of the leading maritime security and risk management consultancies in the world. I want to continue to help children whose lives have been affected by war and conflict around the world. I also want to continue to fly the flag for epilepsy action, and I want to help seafarers who do one of the most important jobs, bringing us our goods every day, whatever the weather. If you want to get involved with Rowing Dangerously in 2019, please get in touch with me via jordanwylie.org and show your support today. Be the difference that makes a difference.
So I'll leave you with that one, and until next time, safe adventures everyone.